The broom handle had worn smooth under her palms from 3 years of sweeping the same stone steps, and Lucy Kincaid wondered if her life would ever amount to more than watching dust resettle where she had just cleaned it away. It was August 1878 in Bandera, Texas, and the summer heat made even the early morning air feel like breathing through wet wool. Lucy pushed a strand of dark hair from her forehead as she worked the bristles across the church steps, the rhythmic sound of straw on stone a familiar comfort. She had turned 21 last spring, and with each passing Sunday, she felt the weight of spinsterhood settling on her shoulders like the Texas dust that coated everything in this cattle town nestled in the hill country. The First Methodist Church stood at the edge of Main Street, its white painted boards already peeling from the relentless sun. Lucy had been sweeping these steps every Sunday morning since her mother passed 3 years ago, taking over the duty as naturally as breathing. Her father, Thomas Kincaid, worked as the town clerk, and they lived in a modest house 2 streets over. It was a quiet life, predictable and safe, and sometimes Lucy ached for something more, though she could never quite name what that something was. She heard the horses before she saw them, the distinctive sound of hooves on packed earth announcing riders coming into town. Most folks would already be stirring, getting ready for the Sunday service that would start in 2 hours. Lucy glanced up from her work, shading her eyes against the rising sun that turned the eastern sky the color of ripe peaches. 3 riders approached, and even from a distance, Lucy could tell they had been on the trail for days. Dust covered them from hat to boot, and their horses moved with the tired gait of animals pushed hard. As they drew closer, she found her attention fixed on the man riding in the lead. He sat tall in the saddle despite the obvious exhaustion, his broad shoulders squared and his bearing confident. A brown Stetson shaded his face, but Lucy could make out a strong jaw darkened with several days' worth of beard. He wore typical cowboy gear, a worn leather vest over a chambray shirt, denim trousers, and dusty boots with spurs that caught the morning light. A gun belt hung low on his hips, and a coiled rope was tied to his saddle horn. The rider pulled up his horse directly in front of the church, and Lucy realized with a start that he was looking right at her. When he removed his hat, she saw a face that made her heart skip in a way she had never experienced. He could not have been more than 24 or 25, with auburn hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of creek water, that peculiar shade between green and blue that changed with the light. "Morning, miss," he said, his voice rough from trail dust but carrying a warmth that made the simple greeting feel like more. "This the Methodist Church?" Lucy found her voice, though it came out softer than she intended. "Yes, sir. Service is at 9 if you are planning to attend." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, transforming his tired face into something that made Lucy's stomach flutter. "Might just do that. Been on the trail from Colorado, and I reckon my soul could use some tending along with my horse." One of the other riders, a grizzled older man with a silver beard, chuckled. "What Russell means is he could use a real bed and a hot meal, and he figures being seen at church is a good way to make a respectable impression in a new town." The young man, Russell, shot his companion a look that was half annoyed, half amused. "Pete's not wrong, but he does not need to announce it to everyone. We have been driving cattle up from the Rio Grande Valley, heading to the railroad in San Antonio. Stopped here in Bandera to rest the herd and resupply." "Your cattle are outside town?" Lucy asked, curious despite herself. "Yes, madam. Got about 300 head in a box canyon about 2 miles west. Should be safe enough for the day while we get cleaned up and take care of business." Russell replaced his hat, and Lucy noticed his hands, strong and capable, scarred from rope burns and hard work. I am Russell Barrett, and these are my partners, Pete Wilson and James Crawford. Lucy nodded to each man in turn. The third rider, James, was younger than Pete but older than Russell, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Lucy Kincaid, my father is the town clerk. Welcome to Bandera. Much obliged, Miss Kincaid. Russell's gaze dropped to the broom in her hands, and something shifted in his expression, a softness that had not been there before. You take care of the church, just the steps, Lucy said, suddenly self-conscious about the simple task. Someone needs to keep the dust at bay, though it is a losing battle in this heat. Seems to me any task worth doing is worth doing even when it is hard, Russell said, and the way he looked at her made Lucy feel like he was talking about something more than sweeping steps. We will get settled at the boarding house and clean up. Might see you at the service if that is all right. The church welcomes everyone, Lucy managed, her heart beating faster than it should. Russell touched the brim of his hat in farewell, and the three riders continued down Main Street toward the boarding house. Lucy watched them go, the broom forgotten in her hands, until they disappeared around the corner. Only then did she realize she was holding her breath. She finished sweeping in a distracted haze, her mind replaying the brief conversation. There had been something in the way Russell looked at her, an intensity that went beyond polite greeting. Or perhaps she was imagining things, projecting her own loneliness onto a stranger's tired face. Lucy had learned long ago not to expect too much from life. Bandera was a small town, and the available men were either too old, too young, or too interested in cattle and cards to pay her much attention. By the time she finished and stored the broom in the small shed behind the church, other townspeople were arriving. Lucy hurried home to change into her Sunday dress, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's and which Lucy had altered to fit. Her father was already dressed and waiting in their small parlor, his silver hair neatly combed and his suit brushed clean of lint. You are late, Thomas Kincaid said, but there was no real reproach in his voice. I was about to walk over without you. Sorry, Papa. There were some trail hands who stopped to ask about the church. I got talking. Lucy fastened her bonnet, checking her reflection in the small mirror by the door. Her face looked flushed, and her dark eyes seemed brighter than usual. She forced herself to calm down, to stop acting like a silly girl with her first crush. Trail hands. Her father's eyebrows rose. I hope they are not the troublemaking sort. Last thing this town needs is a bunch of drovers getting drunk and shooting up Main Street. They seemed respectable enough. Said they were resting their herd before pushing on to San Antonio. Lucy took her father's arm, and they walked together toward the church. The morning had grown warmer, and she could feel sweat starting to bead on her neck beneath her bonnet. The church filled quickly, as it did most Sundays. Bandera might be a rough town built on cattle and limestone quarries, but the people took their faith seriously. Lucy and her father took their usual pew 3 rows from the front, and Lucy found herself scanning the crowd for a familiar brown Stetson. She spotted Russell just as Reverend Martin took his place at the pulpit. The cowboy had cleaned up remarkably well, his hair still damp from washing, his face shaved clean to reveal a square jaw and a small scar near his left ear. He wore a clean shirt and a vest, his gun belt notably absent. He sat in the back row with Pete and James, and as if sensing her gaze, he looked up and met her eyes. Lucy quickly looked away, her cheeks burning, but not before she saw Russell smile. It was a slow, genuine smile that made her feel warm all over despite the heat. She forced herself to focus on Reverend Martin's sermon, something about faith and perseverance, but she could not have repeated a single word if her life depended on it. Her awareness of Russell sitting 6 rows behind her made concentration impossible. When the service ended, Lucy stood with her father, exchanging pleasantries with their neighbors. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, stopped to chat about the upcoming social, and Mr. Patterson asked Thomas about filing some property paperwork. Lucy nodded and smiled at the right moments, while her attention remained fixed on the back of the church, where Russell and his companions were making their way toward the door. She thought he would leave without speaking to her again, and the disappointment was surprisingly sharp. But then Russell was there, hat in hand, waiting patiently while Mrs. Henderson finished her lengthy story about her daughter's upcoming wedding. "Miss Kincaid," Russell said when there was finally a pause in conversation, "I wanted to thank you for the welcome this morning. That was a fine sermon." "Reverend Martin is a good man," Lucy said, aware that several people were watching with interest. Small towns thrived on gossip, and a strange cowboy talking to the town clerk's daughter would provide fuel for speculation. "Are you enjoying Bandera so far?" "What I have seen of it, yes. Though I confess I have not seen much beyond the boarding house and this church." Russell's eyes held a hint of humor. "I was hoping someone might recommend where a trail-weary cowboy could get a decent meal." "Sarah's restaurant serves a good Sunday dinner," Lucy's father interjected, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp as he assessed Russell. "Down Main Street across from the livery, cannot miss it." "Much appreciated, sir." Russell offered his hand and Thomas shook it after a brief hesitation. "Russell Barrett, I am with the trail outfit camped west of town. Thomas Kincaid. This is my daughter, Lucy." Her father's introduction was formal, almost stiff, and Lucy recognized the protective tone he had used ever since her mother died. "How long do you plan to stay in Bandera?" "A week, maybe 2. Depends on how fast the cattle recover and how quickly we can resupply. We pushed them hard getting here, and they need time to put weight back on before the final drive to San Antonio." Russell's attention shifted back to Lucy. "Miss Kincaid, I wonder if you might be at the church tomorrow morning. I noticed the steps could use another sweeping, and I thought I might lend a hand if you did not mind the company." The request was so unexpected that Lucy could only stare for a moment. "You want to help me sweep the church steps? If that would be all right. Seems like it is too big a job for one person, especially in this dust." Russell's expression was earnest, his creek-water eyes steady on hers. "Besides, my mama raised me to be useful, and I have been doing nothing but eating trail dust for 2 months. A little honest work that does not involve a horse or a cow sounds appealing." Lucy glanced at her father, whose expression had shifted from suspicious to considering. Thomas Kincaid valued hard work above almost everything else, and a young man volunteering to sweep church steps apparently scored points in his estimation. "That is kind of you, Mr. Barrett," Lucy said carefully. "I usually start around 6 before it gets too hot." 6 it is, then." Russell's smile returned, and Lucy felt her heart do that strange skip again. "I will see you in the morning, Miss Kincaid. Mr. Kincaid, pleasure meeting you." He replaced his hat and rejoined Pete and James, who had been waiting by the door. Lucy watched them leave, aware that several sets of eyes were now focused on her with great interest. "Well," said Mrs. Henderson, her voice rich with speculation, "that was interesting. Handsome young man, is he not?" "He seems polite enough," Lucy said, aiming for nonchalance and probably failing miserably. Her father took her arm, guiding her toward home. They walked in silence for a while before Thomas spoke. "Be careful, Lucy. Cowboys are wanderers by nature. They do not settle down." "He is just helping me sweep, Papa. It does not mean anything." But even as Lucy said the words, she knew they were not entirely true. Something had shifted that morning when Russell Barrett rode into town, something that made her feel alive in a way she had not felt in years. That night, Lucy lay in bed listening to the sounds of Bandera settling down for the night. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Closer, she could hear her father moving around in his room, getting ready for bed. The house felt too quiet, as it always did, empty of the life and laughter that had filled it when her mother was alive. Lucy closed her eyes and allowed herself to think about Russell, about the way he had looked at her, the genuine kindness in his offer to help. She knew her father was probably right, that cowboys rarely stayed in one place long enough to build anything lasting. But for the first time in 3 years, Lucy felt a spark of something that might have been hope, and she was not ready to extinguish it just yet. Morning came too quickly and too slowly all at once. Lucy woke before dawn, took extra care with her hair, and changed her dress 3 times before settling on a simple gray cotton that was practical but still flattering. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that this was just sweeping church steps, nothing more. But her hands trembled slightly as she tied her bonnet, and her reflection in the mirror showed eyes bright with anticipation. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Lucy left the house, carrying the old broom she kept in the shed for the church work. The air was cooler now, almost pleasant, though she knew that would change quickly once the sun rose higher. Main Street was empty except for a cat prowling near the general store, hunting for mice among the barrels and crates. Russell was already waiting when she arrived at the church, sitting on the steps with his hat tilted back and a second broom resting beside him. He stood when he saw her, and Lucy noticed he wore working clothes today, the same worn shirt and vest from yesterday morning before he had cleaned up for the service. "Morning, Miss Kincaid," he said. "I hope I did not arrive too early." "I am used to rising before dawn, and old habits are hard to break." "You are right on time," Lucy said, oddly pleased that he had been eager enough to arrive early. "Where did you find the broom?" "Borrowed it from Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house. Promised I would return it before breakfast." Russell picked up the second broom, testing its weight. "Now, you have been doing this for a while, so you best tell me the right way to go about it. I do not want to mess up your system." Lucy could not help but smile. "There is not much system to it. Just sweep from top to bottom, try to get the dust off into the street. The wind usually brings more by afternoon, so it is a never-ending battle." "The best battles usually are," Russell said, and there was something in his tone that suggested he was not just talking about dust. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the sound of 2 brooms instead of one making the task go faster. Lucy found herself acutely aware of Russell's presence beside her, the way he moved with easy confidence, the slight furrow of concentration between his eyebrows as he worked. Once their hands brushed as they both reached for the same spot, and Lucy felt a jolt run through her at the contact. "So," Russell said after a while, "have you lived in Bandera your whole life?" "All 21 years, Lucy confirmed. "Born in the house where I live now with my father. My mother died 3 years ago, consumption. Since then, it has been just the 2 of us." "I am sorry about your mother," Russell's voice was gentle. "My mama passed when I was 16, fever took her fast. It is hard, losing the person who made a house feel like home." Lucy looked at him, seeing the understanding in his eyes, the shadow of old grief that mirrored her own. "It is. Papa tries, but he does not know how to talk about her, so we just do not. Some days I feel like I am forgetting her voice, and that scares me more than anything." "My mama used to sing while she worked," Russell said softly. "Old songs from when she was a girl in Tennessee. I can still hear those if I try hard enough. The sound of her voice doing those songs, that stays." They had stopped sweeping, facing each other on the church steps as the sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Lucy felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not entirely sad tears. It had been so long since anyone had understood, since anyone had acknowledged that grief did not just disappear because time passed. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Russell's brow furrowed. "For understanding. For not telling me it gets easier or that I should move on. Everyone in town means well, but they say such useless things sometimes." Russell's expression softened. "It does get different, I suppose. The sharp edges wear down. But I do not think it ever really gets easier, and I do not think we are supposed to just move on like nothing happened. The people we lose, they stay with us. That is how love works, I think." Lucy had never heard anyone express it quite that way, and the simple truth of it settled something in her chest that had been restless for years. She wanted to say more, to tell Russell that he somehow made her feel less alone, but the words seemed too big, too revealing for someone she had only just met. They returned to sweeping, but the silence between them now felt deeper, more meaningful. When they finished, Russell returned the borrowed broom while Lucy stored hers in the shed. He was waiting when she came back around the church, his hands in his pockets and his hat tilted against the rising sun. "Can I walk you home?" he asked, "if that would not be inappropriate." "I do not think that would be inappropriate at all," Lucy said, and meant it. Her father might have different opinions, but Thomas Kincaid was not here to object. They walked slowly down Main Street, in no particular hurry. A few early risers were about now, opening shops and starting the day's business. Mr. Chen, who ran the laundry, nodded as they passed. Mrs. Patterson waved from the boarding house porch, her eyes alight with curiosity. "Tell me about the trail," Lucy said as they walked. "What is it like, driving cattle across all that open country?" Russell was quiet for a moment, as if considering how to put it into words. "It is hard work, harder than most people realize. Long days in the saddle, sleeping on the ground, eating whatever the cook manages to scrape together. You get dusty and sore and so tired you feel like you could sleep for a week." He paused, then smiled. "But there is something about it too, something that gets in your blood. The sunrise over empty prairie, the sound of cattle settling down at night, the way the stars look when there is nothing between you and the sky. It makes you feel small and large all at the same time, if that makes any sense." "It does," Lucy said, though her own experience of the world was limited to Bandera and the surrounding hill country. "Do you think you will do it forever? Drive cattle, I mean?" "No." The answer was immediate and certain. "I have been saving my money, and I have my eye on a piece of land up near San Saba. Good grass, water from the river, enough space to build something lasting. I am 24 now, and I figure I've got maybe 2 more seasons of trail driving before I am ready to settle down and start my own ranch." The mention of settling down made Lucy's heart beat faster. "That sounds like a good plan." "It does it not?" Russell's tone turned slightly rueful. "Pete thinks I am crazy, says a young man should see the world before tying himself down to one place. But I have seen enough of the world to know what I want. Land of my own, a house that does not move, maybe a family someday if I am lucky enough to find a woman willing to put up with an old cowboy." They had reached Lucy's house, a small but neat structure with a porch her father had built himself. Lucy stopped at the gate, suddenly reluctant to go inside and end this conversation. "I do not think you are old," she said, then blushed at how that sounded. "I mean, 24 is not old at all." Russell's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Well, Miss Kincaid, I am glad you think so. Makes me feel a bit better about the gray hairs I found the other day." "You do not have gray hair," Lucy protested. "Not yet, but they are coming. Pete says trail dust brings them out faster." Russell's expression grew more serious. "Miss Kincaid, Lucy, if I may be so bold, I know we just met yesterday, but I would very much like to see you again. Beyond sweeping church steps, I mean. Would you allow me to call on you proper? With your father's permission, of course." Lucy's breath caught. She had been hoping for this but had not dared to expect it. "I would like that very much. But I should warn you, my father is protective. He will have questions and he will expect answers." "I would be disappointed if he did not," Russell said firmly. "A good father should ask questions when a stranger comes calling on his daughter. I promise to be respectful and honest with him." "Then yes, you may call on me, though you should know that I am not very exciting. My life is sweeping church steps and helping my father with his work and attending socials. I have never been anywhere or done anything remarkable." Russell reached out and gently took her hand, a touch so light and brief it might have been imagined except for the warmth that spread from the contact. "Lucy, something does not have to be remarkable to be valuable. The way you care for that church, the way you honor your mother by taking over her duties, the way you spoke about grief this morning, those things tell me more about your character than any grand adventure could. You are remarkable exactly as you are." Lucy felt tears threaten again, but this time they came from a different place entirely. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with such genuine appreciation for the small, quiet things that made up her life. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know. I will speak to your father today if that is all right with you. Get his permission to court you properly." Russell released her hand, stepping back to a respectful distance. "And I hope you will save me a dance at the social this Saturday. I heard Mrs. Henderson talking about it after church yesterday." "I did not think cowboys danced," Lucy said, surprised and pleased. "This one does, though I cannot promise to be very good at it. But I figure stepping on your toes a few times is a small price to pay for the chance to hold you in my arms, even if it is just for a song." The directness of the statement, the clear expression of his interest, made Lucy's cheeks flush hot. "I will save you a dance, Mr. Barrett. Several if you want them." "Russell," he said. "Please call me Russell, and I want all of them if you are willing to give them." Lucy smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I should go in. My father will be wondering where I am." "Of course. I will come by this afternoon to speak with him if that is acceptable." Russell replaced his hat, his eyes warm. "Thank you for letting me help this morning, Lucy. It was the best start to a day I have had in a long time." "For me too," Lucy admitted. "Until this afternoon, then." She forced herself to walk through the gate and up to the porch, though she wanted to stay and talk to Russell for hours more. At the door, she turned back to wave, and he was still standing there watching her, a smile on his face that made her heart sing. Her father was in the kitchen when she entered, scrambling eggs on the stove. He looked up as she came in, his expression thoughtful. "You were gone a long time for just sweeping steps. Mr. Barrett helped me, and then he walked me home." Lucy removed her bonnet, hanging it on the hook by the door. "He is a good man, Papa, kind and respectful." "Is he now?" Thomas plated the eggs, adding biscuits from the warming oven. "And what do you know about him, really? That he is a trail hand passing through? That he has a nice smile and can talk pretty? I know that he understands grief because he has experienced it. I know he works hard and has dreams of buying his own land. I know he volunteered to sweep church steps just so he could spend time with me, which shows he is willing to do humble work for the things he wants." Lucy met her father's eyes steadily. "And I know that when I am with him, I feel alive in a way I have not felt since Mama died." Thomas was silent for a long moment, then sighed and sat down heavily at the table. "Your mother would know what to say right now. She was always better at these things than me." Lucy sat across from him, reaching out to cover his work-worn hand with hers. Mama would probably tell you to give him a chance. She always said you could learn everything you needed to know about a person by watching how they treat others when they have nothing to gain from it. Your mother was a wise woman. Thomas squeezed her hand. All right. When this Russell Barrett comes calling, I will listen to what he has to say, but I make no promises, Lucy. My job is to protect you, and that is what I will do. That is all I ask, Papa. Russell arrived precisely at 2 o'clock that afternoon, dressed in his Sunday clothes, and carrying himself with the kind of nervous confidence of a man about to face something more intimidating than wild cattle or rough country. Lucy answered the door, her own stomach fluttering with butterflies. "Right on time," she said. "My father is in the parlor. Punctuality is a virtue my mama drilled into me," Russell said, removing his hat. "How worried should I be on a scale of 1 to 10? Maybe a 5. Lucy tried to sound reassuring. "He is protective, but he is fair. Just be honest with him." "I can do honest." Russell took a deep breath. "Here goes nothing." Lucy led him into the small parlor where her father sat in his favorite chair, a book open on his lap, though Lucy suspected he had not been reading. Thomas stood as they entered, his posture straight and his expression neutral. "Mr. Kincaid," Russell said, offering his hand. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Barrett." Thomas shook his hand firmly, then gestured to the settee. "Please sit. Lucy, bring us some of that lemonade, would you?" It was a dismissal, and Lucy wanted to protest, but she recognized the look on her father's face. He wanted to talk to Russell man to man without her presence complicating things. She went to the kitchen, poured 3 glasses of lemonade slowly, straining to hear the conversation in the next room. "I will get straight to the point," she heard her father say. "You want to court my daughter?" "Yes, sir, I do." Russell's voice was steady, respectful, but not cowed. "I know it is fast, and I know I am just passing through town. But I have never met anyone like Lucy, and I would regret it for the rest of my life if I did not at least try to get to know her better. You are a trail hand. For now, yes, but I am working toward buying my own land, starting my own ranch. I have been saving for 3 years, and I have almost enough for a down payment on a good property near San Saba. Another year, maybe 2, and I will be ready to settle. And what happens to Lucy in the meantime? Does she wait around while you wander the countryside, hoping you will come back?" There was an edge to Thomas's voice now. "I have seen this story before, Mr. Barrett. Young cowboy meets nice girl, makes promises he means in the moment but cannot keep once the trail calls him back. I would never make Lucy a promise I could not keep." Russell's tone remained calm but had gained an intensity that carried clearly to the kitchen. "Mr. Kincaid, I lost my mother when I was 16, and I have been working steadily ever since to build something that would make her proud. I am not a wanderer by nature. I am a man who knows what he wants and is willing to work for it. What I want right now is the chance to court your daughter proper, to see if what I felt when I met her might grow into something lasting. If it does, I will do everything in my power to be worthy of her." Lucy's hands trembled as she arranged the glasses on a tray. The raw honesty in Russell's voice, the clear declaration of his intentions, made her heart race. "And if Lucy wants to marry you eventually, what then?" Thomas asked. "Does she leave Bandera, leave me to follow you to San Saba?" There was a pause. "I would not ask Lucy to leave you alone, sir. If things got serious between us, we would figure out a solution that took everyone into account. Maybe you could come with us, help us build the ranch. You are a young man still, only what, 45? Plenty of years left to start a new adventure. Or maybe we would find land closer to Bandera. I am flexible on the details. What I am not flexible on is treating Lucy with the respect and consideration she deserves." Lucy could not wait any longer. She brought the tray into the parlor, set it on the small table, and took a seat beside Russell on the settee. Her father's expression was unreadable, but his eyes had softened slightly. "Papa," she said quietly, "I am 21 years old enough to make my own choices. But your blessing means everything to me. I am not asking you to trust Russell completely right now, just to give him a chance to prove himself." Thomas looked between them, then picked up his lemonade and took a long drink. "2 weeks," he finally said. "You have got 2 weeks before you leave for San Antonio, correct, Mr. Barrett?" "Yes, sir, about that." "Then you have 2 weeks to court my daughter under proper conditions. You may call on her here, you may attend the social with her, you may take walks together as long as they are in public places during daylight hours. At the end of 2 weeks, we will all sit down and discuss what happens next. Does that sound fair?" Russell's face broke into a genuine smile. "More than fair, sir. Thank you. I promise I will not disappoint you. See that you do not. And Mr. Barrett, if you hurt my daughter in any way, there is not a place on this earth remote enough to hide from me." The threat was delivered mildly, but Lucy knew her father meant every word. "Understood, sir. I would expect nothing less." After Russell left, promising to return the next evening for dinner, Lucy threw her arms around her father. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you for giving him a chance." "Do not thank me yet," Thomas said, but he hugged her back tightly. 2 weeks is not very long to get to know someone, Lucy. Be careful with your heart." "I will," Lucy promised. But even as she said it, she suspected it was already too late. Her heart had made its choice the moment Russell Barrett smiled at her on the church steps. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of happiness, unlike anything Lucy had experienced before. Russell came to dinner every night, bringing small gifts, wildflowers picked from the hills, a smooth stone he found by the creek that was shaped like a heart, a ribbon for her hair he bought from the general store. He helped Thomas with repairs around the house, fixed a loose step on the porch, cleared brush from the yard, and never complained or acted like the work was beneath him. They took walks every evening after the heat of the day subsided, always staying on Main Street or the well-traveled roads where anyone could see them. Russell told her about his childhood in Colorado, about learning to ride almost before he could walk, about the day his father died in a mining accident, and how that had pushed his mother to move them to Texas, seeking a fresh start. He spoke about his dreams for the future, describing the house he wanted to build, the kind of life he hoped to create. Lucy, in turn, told him about her mother, about the sickness that had taken her so quickly there had barely been time for goodbyes. She spoke about her fears of becoming invisible, of sweeping the same church steps for the rest of her life, and never experiencing anything beyond Bandera's dusty streets. Russell listened with an attention that made her feel heard in a way she never had before. The town social on Saturday night was held in the assembly hall behind the church, lanterns strung from the rafters, and a small band playing fiddle tunes that had couples spinning across the floor. Lucy wore her best dress, a green calico that brought out the color of her eyes, and Russell did not leave her side all evening. He danced every dance with her, despite several pointed looks from other women who clearly thought he should share. Lucy did not care about proper protocol. She was too busy enjoying the feel of Russell's hand on her waist, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "You are a better dancer than you claimed," Lucy said as they swayed to a slower tune, catching their breath. "Motivation improves performance," Russell replied, his voice low near her ear. "When the reward is dancing with the prettiest girl in Texas, a man finds a way. Flattery, Mr. Barrett, honesty, Miss Kincaid, always honesty with you." When the band took a break, Russell led her outside where the air was cooler and the stars blazed overhead in a display that the lantern light inside had dimmed. They stood together at the edge of the church property, the sounds of laughter and conversation drifting from the hall. "Lucy," Russell said, and something in his tone made her look up at him sharply. His expression was serious, almost pained. "I need to tell you something, and I am afraid of how you will react." Her stomach dropped. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you." The words came out rushed, like he had been holding them back, and they finally burst free. "I know it is too soon. I know we have only had 2 weeks, but I cannot keep pretending what I feel is anything less than that. You are everything I did not know I was looking for, everything I did not dare hope I could find. And in 2 days, I have to leave for San Antonio, and the thought of being apart from you is tearing me up inside." Lucy's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her chest. "Russell, you do not have to say anything back," he continued quickly. "I am not asking you to feel the same way or make any promises. I just needed you to know, needed you to understand that this is not some passing fancy for me. What we have, what I feel, it is real and it is deep, and it is not going away just because I have to leave." "Russell," Lucy said again, and this time she reached up to cup his face in her hands, feeling the warmth of his skin, the slight rasp of stubble along his jaw. "You do not have to be afraid of my reaction. I am falling in love with you too." The joy that flooded his expression was like watching the sun rise. "You are." "Yes. I have never felt like this before, never wanted to be with someone the way I want to be with you. These 2 weeks have been the happiest of my life, and the thought of you leaving makes me feel like I am being torn in half." Tears welled in her eyes. "But what do we do? You have to finish the drive to San Antonio, and I cannot just leave my father." "We figure it out," Russell said firmly. "We write letters, lots of them. The drive to San Antonio will take about 3 weeks, and then we will sell the herd and I will come back here. I will come back to you, Lucy, I promise. And when I do, I am going to ask your father for your hand proper because I want to marry you. I want to build that ranch with you by my side. I want to give you the life you deserve, full of love and adventure and everything you have been missing." "You want to marry me," Lucy whispered, barely daring to believe it. "More than anything. I know it is fast. I know people will say we are crazy, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Russell leaned down, his forehead touching hers. "I love you, Lucy Kincaid. Will you wait for me? Will you give me the chance to come back and do this right?" "Yes," Lucy breathed. "Yes, I will wait. I will wait as long as it takes." Russell kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that somehow contained all the promise and hope and love they had been building for 2 weeks. Lucy felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. Tears that came from finally finding something she had not even known she was missing. When they returned to the social, hand in hand, Lucy caught her father's eye across the room. Thomas's expression was knowing, resigned but not entirely displeased. He nodded once, a gesture of acceptance, and Lucy felt another weight lift from her shoulders. The next 2 days passed far too quickly. Russell spent every spare moment with Lucy, and they made plans for the future with the kind of optimism only new love could sustain. He would return in 6 weeks, maybe 8 at the most. He would ask Thomas officially for Lucy's hand. They would be married in the fall, after the worst of the summer heat passed. Russell would finish his obligations with the trail outfit, collect his pay, and then they would go to San Saba together to find that piece of land he had dreamed about. On the morning Russell was set to leave, Lucy woke before dawn and went to the church. She swept the steps alone, the familiar motion now tinged with bittersweet emotion. When Russell had swept beside her that first morning, she could never have imagined how completely he would change her life in such a short time. She heard his horse before she saw him, and when she looked up, Russell was there, already dressed for the trail. He dismounted and climbed the steps to where she stood. "I was hoping I would find you here," he said softly. "Needed to say goodbye proper, away from everyone else." Lucy set the broom aside and walked into his arms, holding him tightly. "I do not want you to go. I do not want to go either. But the sooner I leave, the sooner I can come back." Russell pulled back just enough to look at her face, committing it to memory. 6 weeks, Lucy. Maybe 8. I will write as soon as I get to San Antonio, and I will write from every town on the way back. I will write too. Send your letters to the general store, and I will check every day. Lucy blinked back tears, determined not to cry and make this harder for both of them. "Be safe, Russell. Come back to me in one piece. Wild horses could not keep me away." He kissed her once more, a kiss that held desperation and promise in equal measure. "I love you, Lucy Kincaid. That is not going to change." "I love you too," Lucy whispered against his lips. "So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared, good scared, the kind that means it is real." Russell mounted his horse, and Lucy stood on the church steps watching him ride away, just as she had watched him arrive 3 weeks ago. But everything was different now. Then, she had been alone, resigned to a quiet life without passion or adventure. Now, she was a woman in love, full of hope and dreams for a future that felt bright and possible. The weeks that followed were difficult. Lucy threw herself into her routines, sweeping the church steps every Sunday morning and helping her father with his work. But everything felt muted somehow, like the color had been drained from the world. She checked at the general store every day, and when the first letter arrived 2 weeks after Russell left, she nearly cried with relief. The letter was long, pages filled with Russell's neat handwriting describing the journey to San Antonio, the successful sale of the herd, and his plans to head back to Bandera as soon as he settled accounts with Pete and James. He wrote about missing her, about thinking of her every morning when he woke and every night before he slept. He wrote about the future they would build together. Lucy read the letter so many times she practically memorized it, and she wrote back immediately, pouring out her own feelings and experiences onto the page. The correspondence became a lifeline, something to look forward to, proof that Russell was real and their love was real, and he was coming back just as he promised. The second letter came a week later, then a third, each one filled with the same love and longing. Russell was making his way back to Bandera, stopping in various towns to resupply and rest his horse. He estimated he would arrive in another 3 weeks. Lucy counted down the days, her anticipation growing. She and her father had long conversations about the future, about what would happen when Russell returned. Thomas, to his credit, seemed to have accepted the inevitable. He even began talking about the possibility of moving to San Saba with them, of helping Russell build the ranch. "Your mother would want you to be happy," Thomas said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set. "And that young man makes you happy in a way I have not seen since before she died. I am not going to stand in the way of that. Thank you, Papa." Lucy leaned her head on her father's shoulder. "I am going to miss this, though. This house, this porch, this town, it has been my whole world. The world is bigger than Bandera, sweetheart. Time you went out and saw some of it." Thomas patted her hand. "Besides, San Saba is not so far. We will visit, and you will come back here sometimes. It is not goodbye forever, just goodbye for now." 6 weeks and 3 days after Russell left, Lucy was at the general store checking for mail when she heard the commotion outside. She stepped onto the boardwalk and saw a familiar figure riding down Main Street, dusty and trail-worn but unmistakably him. Russell. She did not care that half the town was watching. She ran down the street, and Russell dismounted just in time to catch her as she threw herself into his arms. "I am back," he said, holding her tight. "I told you I would come back. I knew you would." Lucy pulled back just enough to look at his face to reassure herself that he was really here. "You look tired." "I pushed hard to get here. Did not want to waste a single day that could be spent with you." Russell cupped her face in his hands. "God, I missed you. Letters are not enough, not nearly enough." "No, they are not," Lucy agreed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Come on, my father will want to see you. He has been almost as anxious as me." Russell collected his horse and they walked together toward the house, hands clasped tightly. People stared and whispered, but Lucy did not care. Let them talk. She had her cowboy back, and that was all that mattered. Thomas greeted Russell warmly, which was probably the highest compliment he could give. That night over dinner, Russell formally asked for Lucy's hand in marriage. Thomas gave his blessing without hesitation, and they began making plans in earnest. The wedding was set for October, giving them time to prepare and for the weather to cool. Russell spent the intervening months working odd jobs around Bandera, saving every penny for their future. He and Lucy spent every possible moment together, and their love deepened from the passionate intensity of new romance into something solid and enduring. Lucy helped Russell research properties near San Saba, and they found a promising piece of land with a creek running through it, good grass, and enough timber to build a house. Russell made the trip to see it and came back full of excitement. The owner was willing to sell at a fair price, and Russell had saved enough for the down payment. In September, Russell bought the land. He and Thomas took a week to go up there and start clearing a spot for the house, coming back with stories of the beautiful country and the potential for a thriving ranch. Thomas, much to Lucy's delight, announced that he would indeed be coming with them to San Saba. He had served Bandera for 20 years, and it was time for a change. The wedding took place on a perfect October morning in the First Methodist Church. Lucy wore a dress that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit with loving care. Russell wore a new suit that made him look almost unbearably handsome, though Lucy thought he would have been handsome in anything. Reverend Martin performed the ceremony, and half the town attended. When Russell took Lucy's hands and spoke his vows, his voice steady and sure, Lucy felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I promise to love you through all seasons, good and bad," Russell said, his eyes locked on hers. "I promise to build you a home that is worthy of you. I promise to sweep church steps with you every Sunday if that is what you want, or to show you new horizons if you would rather explore. I promise to honor the woman you are and support the woman you will become. You swept into my life when I needed you most, Lucy, and I will spend the rest of my days being grateful for that gift." When Lucy spoke her own vows, her voice trembled with emotion. "I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise to build our future together, to make our house a home filled with love and laughter. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams and share my own. You came to me at a time when I thought my life would always be small and quiet, Russell, and you showed me it could be so much more. I love you with everything I am, and I will love you until my last breath." They sealed their vows with a kiss that felt like a promise and a beginning all at once. The reception was held in the assembly hall, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Lucy danced with her new husband, with her father, with Pete and James, who had made the trip from Colorado for the occasion. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued, Russell pulled Lucy outside under the stars. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Lucy replied honestly. "You kept your promise. You came back just like you said you would. I will always keep my promises to you." Russell kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for waiting, for believing in us even when it would have been easier not to." "Thank you for seeing me," Lucy said, "for looking at a lonely woman sweeping church steps and seeing something worth staying for." "I saw everything worth having," Russell corrected softly. "And I am the luckiest man alive that you said yes." They moved to San Saba in November, loading up a wagon with their possessions and making the journey north with Thomas. The land was everything Russell had described, wild and beautiful, full of possibility. They lived in a temporary structure while Russell and Thomas worked on building the house, and Lucy discovered she had a talent for planning and organizing that served them well. The house took shape slowly through the winter months, growing from foundation to frame to walls and roof. By spring, it was finished, a sturdy ranch house with a wide porch and enough rooms for a growing family. They planted a garden, bought their first cattle, and began the hard work of building a working ranch. Lucy had never worked so hard in her life, and she had never been happier. Her days were filled with purpose and love, with the satisfaction of building something meaningful. Russell proved to be everything he had promised: a devoted husband, a hard worker, a man whose word was his bond. Thomas thrived on the ranch, finding new purpose in helping them build their dream. He taught Russell the finer points of bookkeeping and land management, and he taught Lucy skills her mother had known: how to preserve food, how to make medicines from herbs, how to manage a household efficiently. In the summer of 1879, Lucy discovered she was expecting their first child. Russell's joy was infectious, and he immediately became even more protective than he already was, trying to prevent her from doing heavy work and fretting over her health. Lucy found his concern endearing even when it was excessive. Their son was born in March of 1880, during a warm spell that felt like a blessing. They named him Thomas Russell, after both grandfathers, though they called him Tommy from the start. Russell proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, and watching him with their son made Lucy fall even deeper in love with her husband. The ranch prospered. Russell's instincts about the land proved correct. The grass was good, the water reliable, and their herd grew steadily. They gained a reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle, and other ranchers sought Russell's advice. Thomas Kincaid proved invaluable in managing the business side of things, and the three of them became a formidable team. Lucy never forgot her promise about sweeping church steps. When a small Methodist church was built in the nearby town, she volunteered to maintain it, and Russell often joined her on Sunday mornings, just as he had in Bandera. It became their time, a quiet hour before services when they could talk and be together away from the demands of the ranch and their growing family. Their daughter was born in 1882, a healthy girl they named Sarah after Russell's mother. 2 years later, another son arrived whom they named Benjamin. The house filled with the sounds of children, with laughter and tears, and the beautiful chaos of family life. Pete and James visited often, bringing news from the trail, though both men eventually settled down as well. Pete bought a small ranch near Fredericksburg, and James married a widow in San Antonio. The four friends stayed close, their bond forged on the trail proving strong enough to weather distance and changing circumstances. Lucy's father lived to see all three of his grandchildren grow into smart, capable young people. He passed peacefully in his sleep in 1890, content in the knowledge that his daughter was happy and settled. Lucy mourned him deeply, but she took comfort in knowing he had spent his final years doing work he loved, surrounded by family. Through the years, Lucy and Russell's love only grew stronger. They weathered hardships together, droughts that threatened their herd, sick children who recovered, lean years when money was tight. They celebrated triumphs together, too. Good rains and fat cattle, children's achievements, the slow, steady growth of something they had built with their own hands. On their 10th anniversary, Russell took Lucy back to Bandera for a visit. The town had grown some but remained recognizable, and the First Methodist Church still stood at the edge of Main Street. Without discussing it, they walked there early one morning, and Lucy found herself standing on the same steps she had swept so many times. "You ever miss it?" Russell asked, standing beside her. "The simple life you had before I showed up and complicated everything." Lucy considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity, but I would not trade what we have for anything. You did not complicate my life, Russell. You expanded it. You gave me everything I was afraid to even dream about." "I asked you once if you would sweep into my life forever," Russell said softly. "Do you remember?" "You never actually asked that," Lucy protested with a smile. "You offered to help me sweep the church steps. But that was what I meant. From the moment I saw you here that first morning, working away at something no one else noticed or appreciated, I knew I wanted you in my life. I wanted to be the kind of man who was worthy of a woman who would sweep church steps every Sunday just because it needed doing." Russell took her hands in his. "Thank you for saying yes to me, Lucy. Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who did not have much more than dreams and determination." "Those dreams and that determination built us a good life," Lucy replied. "A beautiful life. I am so grateful I was sweeping these steps the day you rode into town. I am so grateful you stopped and talked to me instead of riding on by." "It was fate," Russell said with certainty. "You were meant to be mine, and I was meant to be yours. Sometimes I think about all the things that could have gone differently. What if I had taken a different trail? What if we had camped somewhere else? What if I had been too shy to talk to you that first morning? But you did not, and you were not," Lucy said firmly. "You came to Bandera, you stopped at the church, you talked to me. And here we are, 10 years and 3 children later, stronger and more in love than ever." They stayed in Bandera for a week, visiting old friends and showing their children where their parents' love story had begun. Tommy, now 10 years old and already showing signs of becoming a rancher like his father, was fascinated by the town and its history. Sarah, at 8, was more interested in the social aspects, making friends with the local children. Little Benjamin, only 5, was happy anywhere as long as his parents were nearby. When they returned to San Saba, Lucy felt a deep sense of contentment. Bandera would always hold a special place in her heart, but the ranch was home now. The house Russell had built, the land they had worked together, the life they had created, that was where she belonged. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Tommy grew into a strong young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, learning everything Russell could teach him. Sarah developed a talent for healing, studying medicine books Thomas Kincaid had left behind and helping treat sick animals, and sometimes their neighbors. Benjamin proved to have a head for numbers, and began managing the ranch accounts as soon as he was old enough. In 1895, when Lucy was 38 and Russell was 41, they traveled to the Chicago World's Fair with their children. It was the first time any of them had been to a big city, and the experience was overwhelming and wonderful. They saw electric lights and elaborate exhibits, met people from all over the world, and returned to Texas with stories they would tell for years. But as amazing as the trip was, Lucy found herself grateful to return home. The ranch, the land, the simple rhythm of their life, that was what she loved. The grandeur of Chicago could not compare to watching the sunset from their porch, Russell's hand in hers, their children playing in the yard. Tommy married in 1898, bringing home a sensible young woman named Clara who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They built a house on the far side of the property, and Tommy began managing his own section of the ranch. When their first child was born in 1899, a daughter they named Lucy after her grandmother, Lucy Barrett held the baby and marveled at the continuity of life, at the way love multiplied rather than divided. Sarah married a young doctor in 1900, moving to Austin but visiting often. Benjamin, showing no interest in settling down young, focused on expanding the ranch's business interests, establishing contracts with buyers as far away as Kansas City. As the new century began, Lucy and Russell found themselves entering a new phase of life. Their children were grown and making their own way, and they had more time to enjoy each other's company. They took long rides across their land, worked in the garden together, and spent evenings on the porch talking about everything and nothing. "You ever think about that first morning?" Lucy asked one evening as they watched the stars come out. "When you helped me sweep the church steps." "All the time," Russell admitted. "I think about how terrified I was that you would say no when I asked to court you. I think about how lucky I got that your father gave me a chance. I think about every moment that led us here." "We have had a good life," Lucy said softly. "Better than good, extraordinary." "Because of you," Russell insisted. "You took a chance on a wandering cowboy with nothing but dreams. You built this ranch alongside me. You gave me 3 incredible children and more love than I ever thought I would deserve. Every good thing in my life traces back to you, Lucy." "It traces back to us," Lucy corrected. "We built this together. You kept every promise you ever made to me, Russell Barrett. You loved me through all seasons, just like you vowed. You gave me a life full of adventure and purpose. You showed me I was capable of more than I ever imagined." They kissed, a kiss that held 22 years of love and partnership, of challenges overcome and joys shared. When they pulled apart, Russell's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I would do it all over again," he said. "Every hard day, every struggle, every moment of doubt, I would do it all again for the privilege of being your husband. And I would sweep those church steps 1,000 times over if it meant meeting you," Lucy replied. "You asked if I would sweep into your life forever, and I did. Best decision I ever made." The ranch continued to thrive under their careful stewardship. Tommy proved to be an excellent manager, and with Clara's help, he expanded their operations significantly. By 1905, the Barrett Ranch was one of the most successful in the region, known for quality cattle and honest dealings. Sarah's marriage produced 2 children who visited often, filling the house with youth and energy again. Benjamin finally married in 1906, bringing home a quiet woman named Helen, who proved to be a perfect match for his serious nature. Lucy and Russell became the family's cornerstone, the place everyone returned to, the source of wisdom and love that held them all together. They celebrated holidays with a house full of children and grandchildren, told stories of the old days, and watched with satisfaction as the legacy they had built continued to grow. In 1910, Russell took sick with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Lucy nursed him through it, sitting by his bedside day and night, refusing to consider the possibility that she might lose him. Russell recovered, though the illness left him weaker than before, and he finally agreed to step back from the hardest ranch work, leaving the physical labor to Tommy and the hired hands. "I am getting old," Russell admitted one morning as they sat on the porch, blankets wrapped around them against the cool spring air. "We both are," Lucy said pragmatically. "I am 53, you are 56. We have earned the right to take things a bit easier." "I never thought I would live this long," Russell confessed. Trail work is hard on a body, and I figured I would be lucky to see 40. But here I am, 56 years old with more blessings than I can count. You are going to live a lot longer, Lucy said firmly. We have grandchildren to spoil and great-grandchildren to meet someday. You are not going anywhere. Russell smiled and took her hand. Yes, madam, whatever you say. They fell into a comfortable routine, taking morning rides when the weather allowed, working in the garden, reading together in the evenings. Lucy still swept the church steps every Sunday at the small Methodist church in town, and Russell still joined her whenever he felt up to it. It remained their special time, a connection to the beginning of their story. In 1915, they celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary with all their children and grandchildren present. The house overflowed with people and noise and love, and Lucy felt her heart might burst with gratitude. This life, this family, this love, it was more than she had ever dared to dream during those lonely years in Bandera. Quite a crew we made, Russell said that evening when everyone had finally settled down and gone to bed. He and Lucy sat on the porch in their usual spot, the night air warm and full of the sounds of summer. We did well, Lucy agreed. 3 children, 7 grandchildren so far, a thriving ranch, and a love that has lasted through everything life threw at us. I would say we exceeded expectations. I love you, Lucy Barrett, Russell said, his voice still strong despite the years. More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today. That is not going to change until I draw my last breath, and maybe not even then. I love you too, Russell. You made all my dreams come true, dreams I did not even know I had until I met you. Lucy leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, leather and soap and something that was uniquely Russell. Thank you for stopping at the church that morning. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting yourself be seen, Russell countered. Thank you for taking a chance on us. They sat in companionable silence as the stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, that had shone on their wedding night, that had illuminated countless evenings just like this one. The ranch slept peacefully around them, a testament to their hard work and enduring love. Russell passed peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1920, 2 weeks after their 40th wedding anniversary. He was 64 years old and had lived a life fuller than most men could hope for. Lucy held his hand as he went, and though her heart broke, she took comfort in knowing he had died surrounded by love, in the home they had built together, on the land he had dreamed of owning. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Russell Barrett had been respected throughout the region, and the outpouring of love and support sustained Lucy through the darkest days of her grief. Tommy took over complete management of the ranch, and he and Clara moved into the main house to keep Lucy company. Lucy lived another 15 years, watching her grandchildren grow and marry, meeting her great-grandchildren, and continuing to sweep the church steps every Sunday morning until she was physically unable. She never remarried, never even considered it. Russell had been her great love, and what they had shared could not be replicated or replaced. She passed peacefully in her sleep in 1935, at the age of 78, her hand clutching a letter Russell had written to her during those first weeks apart all those years ago. The letter was worn from countless readings, the ink faded, but the words remained. I love you, Lucy Kincaid, and I am coming back to you. That is not going to change. They buried her next to Russell on a hill overlooking the ranch, and the Barrett family continued to thrive for generations to come, always remembering the story of how it all began with a lonely woman sweeping church steps and a cowboy who saw something special in her quiet dedication. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through Tommy's line, and the little Methodist church in town kept Lucy and Russell's broom as a reminder of faithfulness and love. Their story became legend in San Saba, told to children and grandchildren, an example of what could happen when two people took a chance on love and refused to let go. And though Lucy and Russell were gone, their love remained, woven into the land they had worked, the house they had built, the family they had raised. They had swept into each other's lives that dusty August morning in 1878, and they had never looked back, choosing instead to build a future together that exceeded even their wildest dreams. Their legacy was not just the successful ranch or the large family, but the proof that love, real and lasting love, was worth every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. They had found each other against the odds, and they had held on tight, creating something beautiful that would endure long after they were gone.